Few stories are as surprising as that of Saint Paquita. Imagine losing your family, your freedom, and even your very name, being treated like an object, branded and flogged without mercy. Anyone would have given in to despair. But not Paquita. Amidst her wounds, she found something that no one could take away, her faith. And it was this faith that transformed her from a slave to a saint, from a soul marked by suffering to a universal symbol of hope. What makes someone forgive the unforgivable? How is it possible to find peace after a life of pain? In this story, you will discover not only the miracles that elevated her to the altars, but the secret of a force capable of changing any destiny. In the vastness of the African lands, where the sun kisses the skin and the wind sings ancestral secrets, Josefina Paquita was born. The village of Agassa in Sudan was her first home, a place where the days were filled with the warmth of family and the simplicity of a life connected to nature. From a young age, she learned the value of work, helping with the village chores, caring for the cattle, and listening to the stories of the elders around the campfire. Faith, albeit intuitively, already pulsed in her heart, reflected in her respect for life and the trust that everything had a purpose. But who could have imagined that this girl, raised among green fields and tribal traditions, was destined for a path of pain and redemption? Her real name was never revealed, a custom among her people to protect their spiritual identity. But destiny had another name in store for her, Paquita, which means fortunate. And there is irony in that, isn't there? How can someone who would face so much suffering be called fortunate? However, God had already woven her story with threads of hope. When we look back at her childhood, we can see a reflection of our own journey. Who has never had naive dreams interrupted by the harshness of life? Who has never felt that something precious was ripped away without warning? But, as we will see, even the greatest losses can be transformed into unimaginable blessings. And so, Paquita lived her early years wrapped in innocence, never imagining that the world beyond her village would be so cruel. But life has unexpected ways of teaching us about faith and wisdom. When everything seems safe, the unexpected can knock on the door, tearing us away from what we know. That is exactly what happened to Paquita when fate, or rather, the brutality of men, crossed her path mercilessly. Paquita's fate took a brutal turn one afternoon when the sun burned mercilessly over the land. At the age of 9, while picking flowers near her home, the sound of hooves and screams shattered the tranquility. Slave traders appeared like shadows, armed and hungry for victims. She ran, tried to hide, but was captured, tied up, and dragged to an unknown destination. Imagine the terror of a child, separated from her family, without understanding why her peaceful life had been destroyed. Often, we think we have control over everything, but life, abruptly, can put us to the test. And it is at these times that faith and hope become our only anchor. Slavery was not only a physical burden, but a torture for her soul. Sold repeatedly, each new owner seemed to test the limits of her resistance. Whips cut her skin. Humiliation was daily, and the hot iron marks on her body symbolized what the world saw in her, a commodity. Her suffering reached its peak with a cruel ritual of scarification, in which blades drew 114 deep cuts in her skin, filled with coarse salt. The pain was unbearable, but something inside her refused to give in to despair. Who has never gone through moments when everything seemed lost? In those moments when the world hurts us, it is trusting God that keeps us standing. Even in the darkness of slavery, a thread of hope shone within her. While others tried to break her spirit, she learned to resist, to transform pain into strength. Her gaze to the sky was not one of revolt, but of searching for answers. In the midst of suffering, faith began to germinate, and an unexpected encounter would change everything. One night, in the middle of the desert, she had a vision, and that was when her destiny began to be rewritten. In the middle of the desert, surrounded by the oppressive silence of the night, Paquita looked up at the sky and saw a vision that would mark her soul forever. A man dressed in white appeared before her, radiating an inexplicable peace. His gaze was not one of pity, but of promise. "Do not be afraid," he seemed to say. "One day you will follow my footsteps." In that instant, a different warmth ran through her body, as if God were holding her hand. Who has ever felt a direct answer from heaven? Who has ever had a moment when they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that they were not alone? That night, Paquita's faith was not only born, but strengthened. That vision became her rock. While others saw only a slave with no identity, she began to see herself as something much greater. The pain did not define her. On the contrary, it shaped her resilience. With each blow, she remembered the silent promise of that night. With each humiliation, a flame inside her refused to go out. Think of all the times life has tried to make you give up. How many situations seem to have no way out? The difference between those who fall and those who rise again is not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Even without fully understanding her vision, Bakita clung to it with all her strength. While others gave in to despair, she hoped. Deep in her heart, she knew that man in white would cross her path again. And indeed, years later, fate would lead her to him not in the desert, but in an unexpected place where her soul would finally find freedom. When Bakita was bought by the Italian consul Callisto Legnani, she felt something different. For the first time, she was not treated as an object, but as a human being. The trip to Italy was not just a change of territory, but of destination. By setting foot on Italian soil, she unknowingly left behind the chains of slavery and walked towards freedom. How many times does life put us in front of open doors, but fear prevents us from walking through them? The big question is not just finding a way out, but having the courage to take the first step. In Italy, Bakita was welcomed by the Canossian sisters, and there she found something that her soul longed for, the Christian faith. When she heard about Jesus, everything made sense. That man she had seen years before, dressed in white, was Christ. He had been with her long before she knew his name. How many times does God speak to us, but we do not listen because we do not recognize him? The Bible is full of stories of people who met Jesus without knowing it was him. What if, in your daily life, he is already calling you in some way? When she was baptized in 1890, she chose her own name, Josephine. Now, she was a new woman, free by law and, more importantly, free in soul. She did not want to return to Sudan or seek revenge. She chose to stay in the convent because that was where she found her true home. Some doors in life are not for us to leave, but to enter and never turn back. Those who understand this do not waste time fighting against the past, but embrace the future with confidence. As a Canossian sister, Josephine Bakita lived a simple but purposeful routine. She cooked, sewed, and took care of the convent's porterage, but each task was done with such deep love that it transformed ordinary gestures into blessings. Her presence transmitted peace, and her serene voice was a balm for those in distress. It is not always necessary to climb the pulpit to preach. Sometimes the greatest testimony of faith is found in small daily actions. Do those who cross her path feel the impact of her presence? If not, perhaps it is time to see the sacred in the little things. Her testimony of life began to attract people from far away. Young people, adults, and even priests sought her advice. They asked how she managed to forgive after so much suffering. She would smile and say, "If I knew who God was, I would never reject him." This phrase resonated in the hearts of those who listened. Forgiveness was not a choice for Bakita. It was a consequence of her faith. Have we looked at our pains with the same perspective? Unforgiveness is a prison we create for ourselves. What if today you decided to free yourself from it? Over the course of 50 years in the convent, Josefina became a symbol of wisdom and hope. Her gaze carried a truth that words could not express. Children called her Little Black Mother, and adults saw her as a beacon of light in difficult times. When a heart is filled with faith, its life becomes a reflection of God's presence. What would the world be like if more people chose to live this way? The answer may be closer than we imagine. The miracles attributed to Saint Bakita were undeniable signs of her intercession before God. In Brazil, a girl of only 5 years old, a victim of very serious burns, was given up on by doctors. Her family, moved by faith, began a novena asking for Bakita's intercession. In just 3 days, the wounds healed completely, something that science could not explain. The story spread and was rigorously analyzed by the Church, which recognized the case as a miracle. This leads us to reflect. To what extent do we trust in divine intervention in our lives? Another extraordinary episode occurred in Italy, where a young girl, trapped in a network of human exploitation, cried out for help from Saint Bakita. That same night, a stranger, touched by unexpected compassion, helped her escape. For the Church, this was the second miracle necessary for the saint's canonization. God often uses ordinary people to perform great deeds. Have we ever been the answer to someone's prayer? Perhaps God's next miracle will pass through our hands. On October 1st, 2000, before a crowd of faithful in St. Peter's Square, St. John Paul II elevated St. Bakita to the altars, calling her the universal emblem of hope for the oppressed. That moment sealed a trajectory that transcended continents, cultures, and generations. Her life, marked by suffering, became a testament to unshakable faith. But her mission did not end there. Her legacy lives on, touching hearts and inspiring people around the world. Saint Paquita was not only a woman marked by pain, but a beacon of hope for those facing darkness. Today, she is the patron saint of victims of human trafficking, a problem that unfortunately still plagues millions of people around the world. Her story continues to resonate, reminding us that faith can transform any reality, no matter how impossible it may seem. In Brazil, masses are celebrated in her honor with Afro-Brazilian chants, a recognition of her heritage and her struggle. In her native village in Sudan, her memory remains as a symbol of resistance and redemption. Over the years, devotion to Saint Paquita has grown, crossing oceans and uniting different cultures under a single purpose: the search for God and true freedom. In Chio, Italy, where she spent her final days, a luminous procession with purple candles takes place every February 8th, the day of her death. Purple, the color of penance and transformation, symbolizes the journey of those who find redemption in divine love. Her message lives on, inspiring those who need the courage to forgive, start over, and trust that there's a greater purpose behind every suffering. Her life proves that no current is too strong for God's love. May her story teach us that no matter where we come from or what we've been through, there's always a path of light waiting for us. What can we learn from Saint Paquita? How can we apply this wisdom to our daily lives? Perhaps it's time to look at our own journey and see the signs of grace that lead us to something greater. The story of Saint Paquita teaches us that no pain is greater than God's grace. If she, who lost everything, managed to find hope, what stops us from doing the same? Are we clinging too much to our wounds instead of transforming them into strength? Her forgiveness was not a weakness, but an act of courage that freed her soul. What do you still need to forgive? What is stopping you from trusting that God has something greater for your life? This story is not just about the past, but about the present. How many people around you need to hear about this unshakable faith? Share this video. Comment on what touched you the most, and of course, subscribe to the channel to continue learning about stories that strengthen our faith. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any content that can transform your life. Saint Paquita proves that it doesn't matter where we come from, but where we are going. The question is, are you ready to take the next step?